Hello, I'm Claire Smith and welcome to my channel. So today's video is going to be something a little bit different probably from what else you've seen on YouTube recently. I am just going to be going through my finances and my collection numbers in this video. So really, I do this video every single year because I want to keep myself accountable. I am someone in the past who has had problems with blind buying, with unfocused buying with fragrances, and I just want to keep myself on track. I've really tried to alter my behaviours through doing these videos each year, and I really am beginning to see some changes in how I consume fragrances and how I choose fragrances. And I really feel like that's resulting in me having a more rewarding perfume collection, something I always want to reach for. And that's ultimately the goal, isn't it? Something that is your absolute dream collection that you are excited by and you want to wear every single day. So this is something I've not seen anybody else talk about on YouTube, and I guess maybe the fragrance community is just a little bit more guarded about their personal finances when it comes to their consumption of fragrances. But I'm just going to lay it all open here and just tell you exactly what I've spent and break it down for you and compare it with other years. So if you are interested, then please keep watching. So if you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire Smith. I make videos all about perfume, perfume science, perfume history, perfume psychology, and I also just do some straight perfume reviews and also fun perfume tags. So if that interests you and you haven't already done so, then please do consider subscribing, and please also like this video if you do like this kind of content. So let's look back at my perfume goals that I set back in the beginning of January 2024 and just see how well I've kept to those goals, whether I've achieved them or whether I've still got some way to go. So goal one was that I wanted to continue to sample at a similar rate to the previous year, and I must admit this last year I really did fall off the wagon a few times with sampling. I was just really busy at work, and there were some times when I was just feeling too stressed to sit down and analyse fragrances in any kind of meaningful way. But I did still manage to get out 12 different sampling videos, including some range reviews and also just some random new releases and even some fragrances that's been sent to me by my subscribers. And I really enjoyed making those videos, and I really love sampling when I do have the time. I really do want to sample more again this year, and I've got loads of sample sets in my possession at the moment that I really need to review. I'm going to stop buying sample sets for the time being until I've got through all of those sample sets that I haven't reviewed for you on YouTube as yet. So my second goal from 2024 was that I wanted to continue in trying to reduce the amount of blind buying that I was doing in my purchasing. So back in 2021, when I first started YouTube, really I was mostly blind buying. I was someone who really wasn't sampling at all, and that was resulting in lots of fragrances that I really wasn't that bothered about. It also made me scared to spend over a certain amount of money on fragrances. And I think by sampling, it's really opened up another market in fragrance for me because I feel more confident in my decisions, and therefore I'm willing to spend more to get perhaps a fragrance that I will appreciate more in the longer term. So last year I analysed my purchases, and out of my purchases around 70% were not blind buys. When I looked this year, 68% were not blind buys. So I've not improved, but I've not really changed either. So really, I think that needs to be set as a new goal for the next year to try to improve that total. But sometimes I do get that blind buying is just something, if you want to try a fragrance, that can be the only way to try a fragrance. And other people can definitely convince you of that, and you just need to do your own research really and make your mind up as to whether that purchase is worth it for you, whether if you don't like it you can recoup your own money by perhaps reselling that fragrance, whether there's someone you could pass it on to. So I guess blind buying is something I'm never going to completely eliminate, but I still just want to slightly improve on that 70%. So goal 3, weirdly for a YouTuber, was that I wanted to reduce the number of fragrances in my collection overall. I had 132 fragrances in my collection last year, and I felt like that was too much. I felt like I couldn't get round my collection and fully enjoy them all. I felt like I wasn't wearing every single fragrance in my collection. I mean, there are only 365 days in the year. You can work out how often you're on average wearing a fragrance if you've got 132 fragrances. So this year, when I counted up, I actually have 128 fragrances. So thankfully, it's not gone up, but that's not really the reduction I was looking for. I was looking more to head back towards 100. And okay, it's in the right direction, but it's nowhere near 100. But I feel like this is going to be a very long process of me trying to reduce my collection, because at the same time I've got things coming in, and that is something I can control better. But I really feel like I've worked on that this year as well. So that needs to be set as a further goal for 2025. Goal 4 was just a reminder. It was just really a reminder for me to be more mindful in my purchasing decisions. So I want to really sample things. I want to make sure that I'm using wish lists. In fact, in 2024, I said that I was going to write a wish list. And actually, in reality, I didn't do that. I didn't write down exactly which fragrances I wanted. But I did actually tick off 3 fragrances from my in my head kind of wish list. And those were Bouquet Encore from Le Perfumes, also Imperial Emerald from Merchant of Venice, and finally Lilac Love by Amouage. And really there aren't that many fragrances still on my wish list. Actually, I was gifted Lush's 29 High Street. That was on my wish list too. I got that one for Christmas. Really, my wish list at the moment is quite sparse. I would say the one at the top of my wish list really is Amouage's Portrayal. If I see that fragrance for a good price, I will jump on it. So yeah, I feel like my ideas around fragrance have really shifted a little bit over the last couple of years. And I think I've gone from a very big bottle person to a very small decant or travel size kind of person. So goal 5 was not so much around the money side of things. I didn't really mind that I was spending about £10 a week on fragrance. I felt like that was really reasonable and not something that was over the top for someone who's on YouTube. But really, I wanted to limit the number of bottles that were coming into my collection. I wanted to moderate the size of my collection, the growth of my collection. And the only way to do that is to look at how many bottles are coming in and try to reduce that. So last year, I set myself the goal of bringing in 40 bottles of fragrance or fewer into my collection. And actually, the previous year, I had brought in a total of 56 fragrances in that 1 year. And some of them were giveaways, some of them were PR, some of them were gifts from friends. But really, ultimately, I wanted that to be less. And I felt like 40 was quite an ambitious goal. So next, let's look at the numbers around my collection and whether I've met that goal. In 2024, I brought in a total of 22 fragrances that I actually purchased. And I'm really proud of that because that's the lowest number of fragrances I've purchased in any of the years that I've been doing this video. So if we look back at 2023, I actually purchased 32 fragrances in 2023. In 2022, it's 56, and in 2021, it was 47. So really at the height of my buying, I have more than halved the number of fragrances coming into my collection in any 1 year. And I find that really positive. I think that's a really good thing because it just means that I'm thinking more about my purchases before I make decisions. Of course, this isn't the whole story though, because I do enter giveaways and I do win them sometimes. I also get gifted gifts by friends, and that's something that I can't control, and I wouldn't want to control it. That's a lovely thing when someone gives you a gift and it's something that you really want and can enjoy, like fragrance, if you're really into fragrance. But also I get gifted bottles through PR by brands, and that is something that I can control to a certain extent. I've turned down at least 3 offers of PR from different brands that I've not really appreciated over the last year. And that's something that I really am quite picky about. I don't accept everything I'm offered. So I think this is something that I just need to be aware of. And I don't want to bring in things to my collection that I'm just not interested in. So instead, if we look at the number of fragrances coming in overall in all categories over 2024, I was actually gifted 5 fragrances by friends. One of those was actually a swap when I was decluttering another fragrance. Also, I was gifted 6 bottles of fragrance by brands, and that includes 3 5ml bottles by Sana Jardin. So I don't know whether to count those or not because it's quite a small volume, but they are still a bottle. So I'm going to count even 5ml bottles of perfume as a bottle. And also during 2024, I was lucky enough to win 3 Instagram giveaways, and I got 4 bottles of fragrance as a result of that. So I actually won 3, quite normal size bottles, and then 1 5ml bottle as well. So adding all of that up with the 22 actually means in total I've brought in 37 fragrances into my collection, which still means I'm below that total of 40, which is really good. So comparing that number with 2023, 56 fragrances actually came into my collection. In 2022, 66 fragrances came into my collection. So I think that also shows there's just been fewer fragrances overall coming into my collection this year compared with previous years. And I just think that's really positive. I think that really shows that I'm thinking about what I'm bringing in. But also we need to look at the flip side of this. So what I've been decluttering, because decluttering can often be suggestive of something that perhaps you've not thought about when you've been buying. Perhaps, especially if it's a quick declutter, that can really indicate that you've not fully tested something, or perhaps it's been a blind buy, perhaps a risky blind buy, something you've not been sure about in some way. So let's look next at my decluttering habits. So in 2024, I actually decluttered a total of 25 fragrances from my collection. There are 2 fragrances I haven't spoken about yet in videos, but those have already left my collection, so I'm going to count them. So I think that compares pretty well with 2023 actually. And when I looked at how quickly I was decluttering fragrances and whether those fragrances being decluttered quickly were blind buys, in the most part they were blind buys. So I think that's another suggestive reason for me to maybe avoid blind buying, or to maybe be more considered in my blind buying. I really feel like I'm getting quite picky, and blind buying is perhaps not the best idea, especially off other people's recommendations, because other people's taste isn't your own taste, is it? That's just the way fragrance works. So I also looked at how many fragrances that I'd ended up finishing over 2024. So in 2024, I ended up emptying 11 bottles of fragrance, and that was a lot fewer than in 2023 when I used up 21 bottles of fragrance. And that wasn't surprising to me in the slightest. I just have a lot more fragrances that aren't on the edge of being empty. And when you have a larger collection, it just takes longer to emptying them. Also, I noticed a change in my behaviour of how I wear fragrances. So I used to wear a lot of fragrance to bed, and I usually used to choose particular types of fragrance to wear to bed. So particularly vanillas and also aromatic fragrances. And that really faded on me as a behaviour during the summer. And that's really resulted in me not using as many fragrances up. I feel like that trend is probably going to continue into 2025. I don't really feel like I'm going to use up lots of fragrances because I've got perfume trays now, and I think perfume trays are really helping me to get round my entire collection and to be fairer about the fragrances that I'm spending time with. So next, how much have I actually spent on fragrance in 2024, and how has that differed between 2023, 2022 and 2021? So this last year I bought 22 bottles of fragrance, and I spent a total of £587 and 14 pence on those 22 bottles of fragrance, which works out at an average of £26.68 pence per bottle. And why is that so low? It's because in general, I tend to buy second-hand fragrances if I possibly can. I'm quite an environmentally conscious kind of person, and I do it for both environmental and also economic reasons. It's generally cheaper to buy a fragrance second-hand than it is to buy one new. Interestingly, this year I ended up buying 3 of my most expensive ever purchases of fragrance, all in 1 year, and I think that really suggests a growing confidence in my choices in fragrance and a greater willingness to spend on fragrances that I've extensively sampled. I've noticed over this year that I've spent a lot more per bottle on fragrance than I have done in previous years. And I also think that that may be to do with the economic conditions. So I feel like the prices for fragrances have really gone up a lot over the time I've been on YouTube. I feel like back in 2020, you could even pick up things like Mugler fragrances for £30 a bottle very, very easily from new in a retail store. I haven't seen fragrance prices that low for that brand for a very long time. And I think that is a continuing trend. I really feel like even designer fragrances are way over £100 now for some sizes. And I can't see fragrance reducing in price at all, ever. Nobody can really escape this kind of inflation in fragrance, and probably in the rest of your life as well. So if I compare my spending in 2024 to that I spent in 2023, in 2023, I spent £674.63 on fragrance, so actually more. But actually this year, I recorded my spending on samples as well. And in 2024, I actually spent £124.14 on samples. So when I add my spending on samples to my spending on bottles, that totals £711.28 for 2024, which is actually more than my total in 2023. But I did also spend on samples in 2023, but unfortunately I didn't record that data, although I know it wasn't as much as I spent on samples in 2024. So saying that I've spent £711.28 on fragrance this year is not telling the whole story, because I've also resold fragrances I haven't loved, and I've also decluttered some sample sets that I've ended up reselling. So actually when I take that into account and remove the profit that I've made from reselling those things, then my actual spend is actually £456.33, which works out to a spend of £8.78 per week. So I'm really pleased by that, because that's actually less than it was last year when it was £9.83. And really when it was £9.83, I didn't mind that quite so much either, because fragrance really brings me joy. Making videos for YouTube and talking about perfume really just brings me so much joy, and I'm quite prepared to spend that amount of money per week. Really, when you think about it, what else can you do with £8.78 per week? It's not a lot of money these days, is it? It's something that you could quite easily spend on 2 items in a supermarket. I'm so happy to spend that. And I don't really want to limit myself with a budget. I think I'm quite a sensible person. I really just want to limit myself on the number of bottles that I bring into my collection. So let's set some new perfume goals for 2025. So goal 1 is that I want to continue sampling, and I've mentioned lots of sample sets that I have already, and I just really want to actually get those videos out and deliver those videos to you. Making a review video is a really almost diary style way of me recording my thoughts for the future. So yeah, that's my goal 1. So goal 2 is that I want my collection to shrink a little bit, and I'm quite happy to declutter a few. And also I've sort of chosen fragrances for my January perfume tray to a certain extent, some that are on the cusp of being finished. So I'd like to finish a few fragrances as well to try and reduce the numbers in my collection. I want to have fewer fragrances by the end of 2025. Goal 3 is that I really want to reduce the amount of fragrances that I blind buy. This year I didn't do very much blind buying, but it was still more blind buying than the previous year. And ultimately, I would like to really eliminate blind buying, ideally, but sometimes it's just not possible. Some things are just discontinued, and if you're curious and you want to try it, there really is no other way to try them. But I want them to be limited, and I want to really think about what I'm purchasing before I do purchase it. I really feel like in 2024, there are a few moments of unfocused buying, and that was usually in moments of stress around my job and around my personal life as well. And I really think that it shows when I look at when those fragrances were purchased. It's usually when I was ill or there was some kind of stress on me in some way. So I think I just need to be more mindful about those kinds of behaviours and the things that may trigger those behaviours. Goal 4 is that I do not want to be frightened of making larger purchases. I would rather make bigger purchases and fewer of them than make loads of small purchases of fragrances I'm not bothered by. I really want to actually get the fragrances that I really am interested in. And goal 5 is that I don't want to bring in any more than 40 fragrances into my collection. Having watched a lot of end of year summary videos of people's purchasing habits and the amounts of fragrances they've brought into their collection over the year, I don't feel like 40 is very many for YouTube, but it feels like a lot for me. But, you know, this is the only year that I've achieved under 40. So I think achieving under 40 for the next year would still be really positive. So that's my final perfume goal for 2025. But what about you? What are your own fragrance goals for your own fragrance collections during 2025? I'd be really interested to know if you want to reduce your collection, or if you want to grow your collection, or you want to explore a certain house or note profile, or whether you've had problems in the past with blind buying or overconsumption of fragrances, and whether you monitor your own spending and your own behaviours. So thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, then please press the like button, and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.